Okay, we have for our attorneys, Mr. McComber for the plaintiff, Mr. Wells for defense 1, and Mr. Graham for defense 2. I am plaintiff attorney, Mr. McComber.
I'm the witness.
I am attorney for defense 2, Mr. Graham. I thought I was
Defense 1.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm attorney for defense 1, Mr. Wells.
And I am attorney for defense 2, Mr. Graham.
Okay, we're going to do this in 15. Everybody ready? Here's a question by Mr. McComber on the record. How long had you known Celeste prior to this accident?
About a year and a half.
How did you come to know her?
I first was told of her and her husband's residence in Laytonville by their regional center case manager. Later on, the case manager made contact with Dale and Celeste, gave them my phone number, and then they contacted me and told me that they were interested in checking out Cornerstone, becoming employees and clients.
Did Celeste become a client of Cornerstone?
Yes.
And do you recall when that was approximately?
It would be late in '02, later on in '02. It was within a couple of months. It seems like 2 or 3 months after we started in March.
Had she been a client continuously after beginning there? Was it a few months after you started up until the time of her accident?
Now, are you just referring to whether or not she was a client receiving some services or a client who was an employee who was also working at the workshop?
But my question is, was she coming to Community Cornerstone from when she started continuously? Or was there a break where she didn't come there for a while?
I believe there was a break. We did not terminate her purchase of service, but there was a break in utilizing our employment and our services there when she was looking after her father who had an accident.
Do you recall when that was approximately?
I don't know.
How long of a time period are we talking about?
I'm not sure. It could have been 3 to 6 weeks.
Other than that 3 to 6 week time period, she was, for lack of a better word, a regular at Community Cornerstone?
Yeah.
Do you recall the date of this accident?
May 22, 2002.
How did you leave the scene of this accident?
Drove off in my vehicle.
Where did you go?
I went to the hospital.
While you were present at the Benbow Care Home, did you discuss this with any of the other people who were there?
Let's see.
Have any conversations with anyone as to what had happened?
Yeah, I think I recall talking to Peggy and Judy.
Do you recall the conversation you had with Peggy?
If you recall. If you don't speculate.
I can't recall verbatim the conversation.
Can you recall the gist of any conversation with Peggy?
I'll object. That calls for speculation.
Do you recall the conversation with Judy?
I recall having a conversation. I don't recall verbatim what she said.
Do you have an understanding as to how close Celeste was injured?
Yes.
I'll object.
When did you obtain that understanding?
During the conversations with Peggy, Marie, and Judy, parts of it, I'm sure, was at the time at the place of the incident, and part of it was later.
From any conversations you had with anyone, do you know of anyone who actually witnessed this fall?
I'm sorry. Ask that. I don't understand.
From any conversations you've had with anyone, do you know anyone who witnessed Celeste fall?
Marie.
Anyone else?
I think I recall Peggy saying that she had seen at least the latter part of the accident.
Do you know what she meant by the latter part of the accident?
Well, I mean, that's not her words.
I'll object. Calls for speculation. I can see we're getting out of the realm of memory here and into reconstruction.
You can answer the question.
I believe I recall her saying that she had seen Celeste, this is Peggy, seen Celeste as she was falling out of the van.
Was a report made following this accident?
Yes.
What was the purpose of this report?
If it had a purpose. I have some difficulty with that question.
Who required the report?
Redwood Coast Regional Center, State Department of License, Community Care Licensing.
I'm sorry, what was your last?
Community Care Licensing.
Do you know who prepared a report following this accident?
Myself and, well, which report?
Is there more than one report?
That is the reason why I was going to object before. I think the question is vague and ambiguous unless we can pin down which report we're talking about, so maybe we can start over again. Ask another question.
I'll give you what I'll mark plaintiff's number 1 to the deposition. Do you recognize that document?
Yes.
Can you tell me what that is?
That's an incident report form.
And is that your signature that appears on the front of that document?
Yes.
And was this an incident report form that you prepared, or was it prepared by somebody else?
I and Peggy Radcliffe, and I probably had somebody else type it.
Which part of this would have been prepared by you?
The face sheet, first page.
How about the second page?
And the second page is information that I obtained from Peggy so that it would, it was comprised of Peggy's information.
And this is a report that you prepared for the licensing?
For the licensing and regional center.
Was there any sort of manual in existence in May of 2004 that gave information to the van drivers as to procedures they were to follow?
Yes.
There has been discussion in prior depositions, I understand, as to possibly several different versions of this manual. Are you aware of that?
Objection, vague and ambiguous. He obviously was not at all of the previous depositions. Please rephrase the question.
How many versions of the manual are you aware of?
If any, or if more than one.
There's only one version of the Community Cornerstone Transportation Manual.
I'll hand you what we'll call Plaintiff's Exhibit 2 for this deposition. Do you recognize what that document is?
First of all, counsel, let me make an objection to the incident report form that you previously referred to. And I missed your designating that as an exhibit. To the extent that that states evidence of a subsequent repair, I'll object under, I think it's 1101 of the Evidence Code, but that is inadmissible evidence, and I'll object to it on those grounds. Go ahead.
This is our transportation manual.
And what is the purpose of this document?
To apprise the transportation drivers of the policies of Cornerstone as to their conduct and while transporting clients.
And who prepared this manual?
This was prepared and reviewed, prepared by Judy Valet, the transportation coordinator at that time, and reviewed and approved by myself.
How many van drivers did you have employed in May of 2004?
There were at that time, I believe, 4 people who were authorized to transport our clients in our van.
And who were those people?
Myself, Judy, Peggy, and Sue Ivy. I take that back. I don't recall whether she was working there or not. There's 2 others who were authorized. I don't recall if they were authorized or if they were on staff at that time.
The 4 people that you listed, which of those were any of those hired as a quote van driver?
Yes, specifically as a van driver, yes.
And who was that?
Peggy.
Do you recall when she was hired?
No.
Do you know if she was given a copy of this manual at the time she was hired?
I believe she was. Not at the time she was hired, but after she had started working there.
Do you know how do you refer to this document we're looking at right now? What do you call it?
Transportation manual.
Do you know when this transportation manual was drafted?
It was drafted, I believe, in the latter part of '02.
You couldn't state when Peggy began working as a driver for you? Can you give me an approximate date or how long she had been driving before this injury occurred to Celeste?
If you can estimate. If not, then don't answer.
I believe she had been driving for approximately 9 months.
On page 18 of this document, it refers to periodic meetings, I believe, held between the transportation director and the drivers.
Are you referring to the top or the bottom of the page? Counsel, for the record, there are 2 headings on that page: driver safety responsibility and
That's what I'm referring to.
basic safety rules. So you're referring to driver safety responsibility?
Correct.
Okay, your question?
There's a statement in that top paragraph that says, there will also be occasional drivers' meetings and workshops. You see that? It's down approximately 7, 8 lines.
Yes.
Did those meetings take place?
Yes.
How frequently?
We had formal meetings, say once or twice a year. Informal meetings happened very frequently.
Counsel, I think maybe you're crossing him up with your question in that I believe that these subjects were discussed weekly at the safety meetings. And I think that may be the informal meetings that Mr. Valley is talking about. But at the very formal meetings, the specific driver safety meetings were at a different set of intervals. So maybe you want to rephrase your question to address those 2 specific types of meetings.
When you just answered the question that informal meetings were held, I don't recall the words you used.
Frequently.
Were you referring to the weekly meetings?
I was referring to weekly meetings and also meetings, personal contacts with the driver.
What are the weekly meetings that you refer to?
We have 2 types of weekly meetings. One is a client-employee safety meeting that happens every Monday morning. And then we had staff meetings that were supervisorial staff briefings that were, every week to 2 weeks, sometimes as much as 3 weeks apart.
On what days would those be held?
Thursdays.
So which meetings are you referring to when you say these drivers' meetings took place?
By drivers' meetings, you mean discussions about driver safety?
I'm asking him about the manual here that says there will also be occasional drivers' meetings. I've now heard about 3 different meetings.
Right.
What do you consider to be drivers' meetings? Which of those meetings?
Well, I believe they are meetings in 2 different scenarios. One is formal meetings with all drivers.
I understand that, and that's once or twice a year, correct?
Yes.
In addition to those meetings, once or twice a year, were there other meetings where driving was discussed and the specific purpose of that meeting was to discuss driving as outlined in this manual?
They were not formal meetings, but they were definitely one-on-one situations where briefings were being given by myself or the transportation coordinator.
And again, how frequently did those occur?
Sometimes daily, but generally weekly.
And what types of matters need to be discussed daily?
All types of matters concerning safety and client behavior, frequent updates on particular client-employee behavior, if they might be something that the driver needs to know about, and concerned with their safety.
Is this the same transportation manual that's in effect at the present time?
Yes.
Do you believe that this manual adequately addresses the safety concerns of transporting clients?
Yes.
Who would have authority to make changes in the transportation manual?
Myself and the board of directors of the corporation.
Just so I understand, if you made a change in the transportation manual, would you require approval by the board of directors?
No.
To your knowledge, have the board of directors made any changes in the transportation manual?
Not to my knowledge.
Have you made any changes in the transportation manual?
Since when?
At any time since this was drafted?
Yes.
How many changes have been made?
We've added 2 lines, 2 items.
Which are those?
We've added the,
Well, maybe if you know where the lines are in the manual, maybe you should point them out.
well, he says, since this report was done, so they're not in this report.
Go ahead.
We've added the rule, or the reminder, I mean. It was actually already in effect, but we stated the rule that clients weren't to be left at a board and care facility unless there was someone there to receive their supervision or to supervise them. And we made the rule explicit that the drivers be posted at.
I'm going to object at this point again that this is evidence of subsequent measures taken, either remedial measures or measures of repair. And like I say, I think that's Evidence Code Section 1101.
You can answer the question.
Posted at the door.
For what purposes?
Same objection. May I have a running objection on this?
That's fine.
To open and close the doors and to assure that everyone is buckled in their seats.
You've provided me the names of individuals who were licensed to drive this van in 2004. Let's say from January 2004 up until the injury occurred on May 22nd, did you ever drive the van for any purpose?
Yes.
On how many occasions?
I couldn't say.
Would it be weekly?
Not necessarily.
Several times a month? Could you pin it down that way?
I would say infrequently, a couple times a month.
For what purpose would you be required to drive the van yourself?
In the capacity as a program training instructor and transporting clients to program activities, and yeah.
During that time period, did you ever transport any clients from their homes to Community Cornerstone?
I don't think so.
During that time period, again, January through May 22 of 2004, did you have occasion to transport Celeste on any Community Cornerstone activities?
Yes.
Okay, we will identify. I am plaintiff attorney, Mr. Hartz.
I am the witness.
I am the attorney for defense 1, Mr. Gill.
I'm attorney for defense 2, Mr. Castle.
3 and 14. So this is going to be 210 words per minute. Beginning with a question by Mr. Hartz for the record. What was Mr. Stein's purpose for calling his psychiatrist in this proceeding?
Objection. It calls for speculation by this witness and for matters that are privileged.
When was the second conversation you had with Mr. Stein, the one that took place after you reviewed the file at the courthouse?
I didn't catch the first word.
When was that conversation?
2 or 3 days after the first one.
What was your fee arrangement with him?
That he would pay as a retainer, which he did.
How much was that?
I think at first it was $1,000.
And what were the arrangements?
He would pay for my time.
What was your hourly rate, sir?
I think at that time it was about $200 an hour.
Did you personally draft the complaint?
Yes.
How long did that take?
How long did it take? I don't know. I don't know whether I wrote it out first or dictated it.
Could it have taken more than 2 hours?
No, I doubt it.
At any time prior to the time you filed and served the complaint, did Mr. Stein tell you that he had attempted suicide?
Objection, that's certainly a privileged matter.
No, it's not privileged. I'm aware of the fact that he attempted suicide.
But you are asking what he told me. That is privileged.
All right. Were you aware of the fact that he had attempted suicide?
You mean before he came to my office? Was I aware of that fact? No, I was not aware of that fact.
Then at any time before you filed the complaint, were you aware of the fact that he had attempted suicide?
I can't answer that question
Why not, sir?
because I can't remember.
Okay, at any time before you filed the complaint against my partner and me, did you know that Mr. Stein had psychiatric counseling?
I don't recall whether I knew that or not. I will say I thought that if a psychiatrist was in the picture, that the doctor must have been in some prior contact with him, that he either examined him or treated him, but that was an assumption on my part.
Would you please state the definition of legal malpractice?
Legal malpractice?
That's right.
That is a breach of a duty owed to a client.
Do you know what are the elements of a cause of action based on malpractice?
Yes, let's see. It would be a failure to adhere to the standards of the area.
Well, that answer is too general.
All right. Well, you'd have to prove that a client hired an attorney who then breached his duty to that client. Is that okay?
And damages too, right?
And damages too, yes.
Okay, now the facts. What facts did you find which established the legal representation by our office of Mr. Stein?
Repeat your question, please.
Do you mean,
Wait a minute. Repeat your question, please.
What facts did you find indicating that Mr. Stein was represented by the law offices of Hartz and Harris?
you mean other than communications from the client?
That's right.
I saw your name on a pleading. It said you were representing him. That means that you were informing some judge that you were his attorney of record, so I assumed that that was a fact.
And other than what Mr. Stein told you, what did you do to confirm that this office breached a duty to Mr. Stein?
Now you're asking for his work product again. You may not have that. That's privileged.
Certify that question, please. All right, we have now Mr. Beauchesne for the plaintiff and Mr. Weiss for defense. I am plaintiff attorney, Mr. Beauchesne.
I'm the witness.
And I am attorney for
No,
defense.
your court.
Oh, no, I'm back to court, sorry.
I'm attorney for defense, Mr. Weiss.
Actually, let's go ahead and start up on line 7 with the court. We're going to call it in 14s again, so this is going to be at 210 words per minute.
Okay, and it's the court for the record. Mr. Weiss, I understand this is cross-examination. You waived and let Mr. Beauchesne question before, but you should have listened to the questions he asked and the answers given. That has been asked and answered. Objection sustained.
How far from the bicycle lane was this vehicle stopped?
Right alongside it.
May I have a moment, Your Honor? Nothing further.
Any further questions, Mr. Beauchesne, of Mr. Norquist?
Mr. Nordquist, this gentleman that you say by the name of Ursini, can you spell his last name for me, please?
Ursini.
And do you have his address available?
Yes.
Okay, fine. No further questions.
May Mr. Norquist be excused, gentlemen?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Mr. Weiss, anything to offer?
Nothing to offer.
Mr. Beauchesne?
Nothing to offer, sir.
Appearing to me that the offense of violation 644-211 of the California Penal Code, the felony as set forth in count 1 of the within complaint has been committed, and there's sufficient cause to believe the within named defendants guilty thereof. I order they each be held to answer the same and committed to the sheriff of the Stanislaus County, where they may be released on bail in the sum of $5,000. I'll set an appearance date in the Superior Court for the 3rd day of June at 8:30. Defendants are ordered to be personally present at that time. I'll find that there has been no evidence offered as to counts 2 and 3 of the complaint. As to those counts, the defendant, William Joe Bird, will be ordered discharged. The defendants are remanded to the custody of the sheriff.
Okay, that's the end of our warrant.